All right, we're going to be recapping Thursday Night Football. Finally, football was here. Man, it was fun to actually watch a game of football that actually mattered. But we have a DeAndre Swift signed jersey, so if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and invite some of your friends as well. Again, we try to do daily content, either whether it's shorts or videos out there. We're going to go through Buffalo first. We're going to go through the Rams first. There's some huge losers that we need to talk about. And there's a couple winners in there as well, but some huge losers that we need to discuss if we're continuing to sell or if we're going to buy on the low, or if we're going to think that the week one was just an abnormality. It happens. Either week one is I would say the biggest. You see the people say, hey, I knew that this was going to happen. Or you have the guys that go, oh my goodness, I need to sell off because it's an absolutely horrible week one. Let's just start with the great. We're going to start in Buffalo. It is Josh Allen. When we talked about the Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Justin Herbert type of like these three are QB 1, 2, and 3, it's really hard to see these types of games and not think, man, Josh Allen is the number one quarterback in all of Dynasty, all of fantasy football. It's hard to argue against that. I mean, I've had him in a tier, but should we have him in a tier? It's going to be very interesting to see if he sets himself ahead of Herbert and Mahomes, depending on how their seasons go. But, I mean, Allen, 297 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I mean, he looked flawless besides the 2 picks. I mean, one of them wasn't his fault. 10 for 56 on the ground and a touchdown. You are getting 11.6 points on the ground, and that is not including one of the most efficient and one of the best passers in the entire game. And so that is why it's hard to see him be even. I mean, you look at Patrick Mahomes, great, but is he going to have the rushing ability, the talent? He's gonna avoid play. He's going to avoid defenders, but he's not going to run for 10 rushes for 56 yards and a touchdown. Same for Herbert. So I have a feeling we're going to talk maybe about halfway through the year and go, yep, Allen's going to have another QB1 overall season, and maybe he shouldn't be in the same tier as Herbert and Mahomes. He should be in his own tier, and he should be number one overall in every single format. Now, interesting things. The running back situation here was very, very weird. I wouldn't even say very, very weird. It was, well, I mean, Singletary, if you watched the game, looked like the best running back they had. He was 8 for 48, which when looking at the box score, I was like, man, he seemed like he was running for 15 attempts for 75 yards. It seemed like that, but he didn't. He ran for 8 for 48. Just nothing really through the air as well. I mean, you're going to have a guy who, again, does not have much receiving, or they don't utilize running backs in the receiving game. They did Zack Monsta here, so we'll see if that, we'll talk about how that might transfer to James Cook here. But Singletary, 8 for 48. No touchdowns, because, of course, Josh Allen takes the touchdown. And it didn't even look like they were going to run it all with Singletary or Moss. It was all Josh Allen down there. So, really, I see a frustrating running back 3 with no receiving upside for Singletary. I like the video. I mean, he looked good. But I just don't think that in that Buffalo system that they're going to utilize, it's going to be the Miles Sanders of last year when Jalen Hurts was the running back 1, it seemed like, on that team. Josh Allen's the running back 1 on this Buffalo team. And then you get, all of a sudden, you have a little bit of Boston Scott and a little bit of Kenneth Gainwell. You're going to have a little bit of Zack Moss. You're going to have a little bit of James Cook. You're going to have a little bit of Singletary sharing these touchdowns. And if I believe that's what's going to happen, it's just going to be frustrating. And then you're going to have Josh Allen steal about 6, 8, whatever of them. And it's just going to be a mess. Which leads me to the next running back, 6 for 15, Zack Monsta. If you can get anything for Zack Monsta, this is the time to do it, because he did have 6 targets, 6 for 21 in the receiving game. I think that's going to get transferred to James Cook as long as James Cook doesn't fumble the ball continuously. We're going to get to James Cook 1 for 2. He's probably he was the biggest loser because he had negative points, but 1 for 2 rushing, and he fumbled the ball. And so we didn't see him again. I think that I was surprised we didn't see him late in that fourth quarter, but I think James Cook, again, being a rookie, you're in the doghouse now. It's going to take some time. If you are somebody that, I think this is a great time. No, this is not a great time. I think in a couple of weeks is going to be a good time to buy James Cook, because I think he's going to struggle for the first 4, 5, 6 games. And then all of a sudden you're going to see Zack Moss leave. And then you're going to have James Cook getting 6 targets out of the backfield, I think, consistently in the receiving game. And when you get that, you're going to have a better running back. But that is still very risky, because we're going to talk about how Crowder and how Isaiah McKenzie also kind of use that short that short game to their advantage. So really, you have the deep game, Gabriel Davis and Stephon Diggs, which we're going to talk about again too. So I think that you definitely have to put tempered expectations on this Buffalo running game, and it stinks. Buffalo, in fact, I don't even know if I really want a really good running back in the 2023 class to go to Buffalo, because I feel like they're just going to misuse him. Diggs looked amazing. 9 targets, 8 for 122 and a touchdown. It's the reason why he's a top 5 dynasty wide receiver, just border into that area, behind, of course, the Chase and Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. He's just right behind that area, and he's got a couple more years again with Josh Allen, which is going to be amazing. Now, Gabriel Davis is somebody that I haven't talked about much in the entire offseason. I know a lot of people have loved him, and I think a lot of people said, hey, he's way too overrated. I've kind of been in the middle, which is probably why I haven't done much talking about him. I just think with 5 targets, 4 for 88, and a touchdown, you're going to have a lot of these games where maybe he's not heavily targeted, but with Josh Allen, you just need a couple targets, and if he gets, I think I can easily see him with 8 to 10 touchdowns, and you're going to have potentially a 1,000-yard season out of Gabriel Davis just based off of being not even highly targeted. I think Chase Claypool's season of 2 years ago, where he didn't have necessarily a ton of targets, but he's going to have these games where it's 4 for 88 and a touchdown. He's not going to have games where it's going to be 10 for 83 yards and a touchdown. He's not going to be highly targeted. It's going to be a higher average depth of target, which means every target is going to be worth more. So Gabriel Davis, I think, is going to be a valuable wide receiver 2-ish. I think wide receiver 2. We'll just say wide receiver 2. I could see him flirting in the minds of like, wow, we look at it and it's Terry McLaurin and Gabriel Davis is like right behind him or right around that area, and you go, man, I drafted Gabriel Davis much lower. And so I see that being a potential good route for him. Now, the Crowder, 4 targets, 3 for 28. Isaiah McKenzie, 3 targets, 2 for 19 and a touchdown. Again, I think these guys are going to just siphon from each other. It's going to be, if you could combine them to have 7 targets and be 5 for 47 and a touchdown, I would love that. But I think you're going to see I think one of the broadcasters said you're going to see 1 wide receiver against man and 1 against zone, and that just frustrates me. I don't want a wide receiver out there for 50% of the snaps. And if they don't have a clear wide receiver 3, then I think this is going to be a problem for Buffalo. Not even a problem for Buffalo. I think that's going to be a problem for fantasy owners that are rooting for Buffalo until one of them gets hurt. And so Crowder's a good enough wide receiver to be out there. Isaiah McKenzie doesn't seem to have controlled that role, and he made that mistake for that pick, the interception too. So I am not going to be counting on any of these probably being, unless one of them gets hurt. I think if one of them gets hurt, then that is the time in Dynasty or Redraft to snag one of those 2. And then Dawson Knox, 2 targets, 1 for 5. Dawson Knox is, again, going to be the touchdown upside tight end. But in Dynasty, I've never seen it. He was never one of those tight ends that I've been a big fan of. He's a touchdown-dependent tight end that is on, yes, a great offense. But again, 1 for 5, it's like these are games that you're going to get that are going to absolutely kill your team. And then next game he could go 3 for 22 and 2 touchdowns, or even 4 for 33 and 3 touchdowns, and you're like, well, I should have started Dawson Knox. And then he could come back again with another 1 for 5. And these are just the games that Dawson Knox does, and it just kills fantasy teams. And so I cannot have a player like that is going to be potentially having 1 or 2 points if he's just basically worked out of the offense. And there's just too many mouths to feed. Because I like Gabriel Davis. I like Stephon Diggs. They're going to throw it a little bit to the running back, and they're going to throw it to the wide receiver 3, whether that's Crowder or McKenzie on the field. So, Allen can only throw it so many times. He really can. Now let's go to the Rams. And it's already a 9-minute video, so let's go to the Rams. We're going to try to be a little bit quicker here. Stafford, 240, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Am I worried about him? No, I'm not worried about him. The elbow thing doesn't even worry about me. Buffalo's defense is a great defense, and I talked about that earlier in the week too, that Buffalo's defense is great against the receiving game, and it's why I thought the wide receiver 2 on the Rams was going to be a very struggle fest, whether that was Van Jefferson, which deemed to be out, and then whether that was going to be A-Rob, which we'll get to talk about, or Higbee, or anybody else. The shocking thing is the running back field. Let's talk about the running back field. Henderson, 13 for 47, 5 for 26 through the air, no touchdowns. And Akers, 3 rushes for 0 yards, basically was never on the field. I saw him play 2 series. I don't know, not even 2 series. I saw him play 2 sets of basically 4 downs. I saw him play 2 sets of 4 downs was probably like 6, 7, 8 downs is what I saw, which was not good for Cam Akers. If you are a Cam Akers fan, this might be the time you almost can't sell at this point, but if you can get something, if you can end up trying to snag a late first from, there's always somebody that loves Cam Akers that says, this isn't the game. This is just week one bias. I think Henderson will have at least a 40% backfield part of that role. And even if Cam Akers is the other 50, 60%, which I don't think will be, I think this is, again, where I've said I am the captain of Cam Akers, the hatred. I've always said that I thought Cam Akers was being overrated based on talent, and I thought opportunity was the biggest key. And if you are siphoning that opportunity from because of Henderson, I think Henderson's the better player. And I think Henderson's going to continue to do kind of his thing, and I think he's going to be a high high running back 3, with times that he's going to have, if he continues to have the majority of the snaps like he did, like 70-80% of the snaps, he can easily be a running back 2. Easily be a running back 2. So he is somebody that I am definitely buying what I saw in week 1. And it's one of those things. I don't understand why I didn't do this, but I've been selling and saying, putting crap on Akers' name for even before his Achilles injury, which was unfortunate. I've been saying bad Akers. I have never been saying go buy Henderson, which was probably my mistake, saying, hey, don't buy Henderson. Even looking back at my rankings going, oh, I'm higher at Henderson than most people. Whoops. I never actually said, hey, buy Henderson, which is my fault. But now I'm saying, after the week 1, it's going to be hard to buy him. But I do believe if you say, hey, you know what, maybe the Akers will come back. If people have, there's always an Akers lover in the league. I've seen him in every single league. And so if you can sell Akers, that person will probably, hopefully you can try to figure out who has Henderson. Hopefully you can try to get him away. Kupp, man, so amazing. 15 targets, 13 for 128 and a touchdown. I think I'm going to be wrong with my Justin Jefferson being a wide receiver 1 overall. I heard Chase being in that conversation too, but man, Kupp just looks like he's just going to repeat it. I mean, this was a horrible game, 240 and 1 for Stafford, and still Kupp gets 128 and 1 off of 15 targets. If there's going to be no Allen Robinson, this is going to be Cooper Kupp Triple Crown repeated again, and that scares. Well, I mean, if it scares me is I don't have very many Kupp shares, unfortunately. So yeah. Now, something to kind of note here, Higbee, 5 for 39, did have 11 targets. So something to note, if they're going to continue to put him as part of the... Just got a random cough. If they're going to involve him more in the offense, Higbee could be a low-end tight end 1. I mean, there's about 20 tight ends that feel like they could be into that tight end dead zone. But Higbee was somebody that was super low, and if he's going to get a bunch of targets, those targets are going to be valuable, especially in the Rams offense. And so this, again, was a bad Stafford game. So if you want to buy Higbee, it wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, Higbee's probably moving up my rankings a little bit with these 11 targets. And then Allen Robinson, 1 for 12, 2 targets. Allen Robinson is somebody that I have sold in a couple of different leagues because his value is getting to be almost too high and ridiculous. I always had the concern, and I've never been necessarily a hatred of Allen Robinson. I had the concern that what last year was that actually because he didn't want to be there in Chicago, or is he actually being washed? After week 1, I can't tell. I mean, it just doesn't seem good. I mean, maybe they have a different game plan and getting A-Rob in, but if Allen Robinson continues to perform poorly, like if we're talking, I mean, I'm not starting him next week. If I have him, I don't have him in any league, but if I have him, I'm benching him and saying, hey, prove it to me, because last year he bombed. He was one of the LVPs, least valuable players, for where you drafted him and the performance he gave, because people kept putting him in the roster and he kept doing absolutely nothing. And so he almost has to do you have to prove it to me, because this is starting to get ridiculous. So, again, this is my week 1, first game of the year reaction. Peace out. Everyone have a wonderful first week of fantasy football.